Good morning and welcome to the Backpass, Ireland's premier morning football show, brought to you by ULFM. I'm Paul and I'm joined by Kaylee and Luke in studio on a rainy Monday morning in Limerick, and of course producer Jack in the booth. On today's show we will be covering an exclusive interview with new Dundalk FC manager Kieran Kilduff. We will be joined live in studio by UL Soccer's Tom Kelly on their hopes at defending the Collingwood Cup again this year. Putting Irish football back on the radar, we speak to Ronan Calvert, owner of the Ireland Raider social media channel. And finally, it's the Backpass Hot Takes. We asked listeners for your hot takes on a number of football topics, which we will review live on air at the end of the show. Before we do all that, let's go over to Luke Allen for the latest news headlines.
Thanks, Paul. As the general election campaign enters its final few days, the political parties are today focusing on housing, the economy and healthcare. The Fine Gael leader Simon Harris will meet small and medium-sized business owners, while Fianna Fáil will reiterate its promise to build 22,000 social and affordable houses this year. Elsewhere, Sinn Féin is calling on the Housing Minister to release the country's latest homeless figures, while the Social Democrats will publish its policy to provide greater support for families. Labour is launching its Dublin Manifesto today, and the Green Party is announcing details of its priorities in the area of arts and culture. Many parts of the country are still reeling from the damage caused by Storm Bert over the last few days. A clean-up operation took place in Killybegs yesterday after severe flooding on Saturday night. A status yellow wind warning for Donegal remains in place until 10 a.m. this morning. However, all other wind warnings have now expired, as Storm Bert continues to move away from the country. ESB Network says it will continue to reconnect customers who lost power during the storm, which as of this morning were still numbered in the low thousands. Nearly 200 nations have approved a climate deal that raises at least $300 billion a year to help poorer countries deal with the impacts of climate change. Developed countries will lead the payments, according to a deal clinched at the COP29 conference in Baku. The new goal is intended to replace developed countries' previous commitment to provide $100 billion per year in climate finance for poor nations by 2020. That goal was met 2 years late in 2022 and expires in 2025. Avantika Goswami, Programme Manager for the Centre of Science and the Environment, criticised the deal for not going far enough.
Is an astonishing disappointment. We see a commitment of $300 billion as a part of a larger mobilization of a $1.3 trillion vague target. But the $300 billion may not just come from country governments. It's expected that private sector and multilateral development banks may play a role. So this is a historic moment, but it's a historic moment of disappointment.
Environment Minister Eamon Ryan welcomed the hard-fought deal, citing it as a hopeful step. That's all your news for this morning. Over to Kaylee Kelleher for sports.
Rugby first, where Andy Farrell says he'll make tough calls selections for Ireland's final Autumn Nations series against Australia this coming Saturday, as Farrell rejigs his squad after this team's 52-17 win against Fiji, with Gus McCarthy having a debut to remember. Craig Casey and Sam Brendergast looked excellent together as the back half combination with Bundyaki for a structured force on both sides of the ball. And in football news, Ruben Amorim admitted Manchester United would suffer a long period after a 1-1 draw against Ipswich Town on his debut as head coach. Amorim enjoyed the perfect start when Marcus Rashford poked the visitors ahead after 81 seconds, where Ipswich roared back and claimed a deserved leveller via Omari Hutchinson deflected a 43rd minute strike. And finally, in Formula 1, Max Verstappen won a record-tying 4th consecutive Drivers' Championship in Las Vegas at the weekend. Max secured the victory with 2 races remaining by finishing 4th place as he finished ahead of title rival Lando Norris in 6th, cementing the victory. And in the constructors, Mercedes ensured maximum points as George Russell finished ahead of Lewis Hamilton and achieved Mercedes' first 1-2 finish since Brazil in 2022. That's it for your sports update today. We'll cross over to Oriel Park, where reporter Anthony Bravender is now with new Dundalk manager Kieran Kilduff.
Kieran, first of all, welcome to the show. You were a legend here as a player, so now as a manager, how does it feel to return to Dundalk FC?
Yeah, look, I suppose you start by saying the truth, which is I'm delighted to be here. It's a great opportunity. It's a club that I have a great history with, a club that only last year I was coming up here and commentating on some of their games, and I got a great reception, and I've players here, something we've cared about, and let's be honest, as it's been alluded to, there was probably a bit of a dark time the last while. It's been a tough situation, but I wouldn't be here if I didn't think that there was, if I didn't have the stomach for a fight, if I didn't believe that what the lads were trying to do and the people behind the scenes are trying to do, which is to get us back to days which weren't too long ago of this being a really powerful football club. I'm here for the footballing reasons and nothing else. There's stuff outside of my control that I can't control, but what I can control is that I will give everything in my armoury to come up here and do the best of my job for Dundalk Football Club.
With all that's been going on at the club this season, what do you think is the biggest challenge to you now coming in as a manager?
Getting the belief around the place that that things are okay. That I think as soon as the football starts, I think everyone will take a sigh of relief and kind of just get behind it. I think getting the buy-in from the town again and getting people back out and understanding that, yeah, listen, there's probably enough villains in this piece already. Do you know what I mean? If you look back at it, there's enough people to look back and going, a lot of these problems are problems of the past. We're trying to get a better future, and I think getting that assurance into the stand and getting it around my group, and I've no doubts that my group and my staff and myself and the lads around here will be all pulling in the same direction, but it's making sure everything else pulls with us. All right, it's a time for pulling together. It's not going to be down to 1, 2, 3 people. It's going to take a club now. You know what I mean? And that's probably it's not even a worry, it's a challenge that I'm thinking going, we need to get everyone on side now. Do you know what I mean? We need, if you want to keep we're either looking for solutions or problems, and I think now is time for looking for solutions.
And finally, Kieran, Dundalk's fans are known to be some of the most passionate in the League of Ireland. What message do you give those loyal supporters who've stuck through the club through thick and thin?
Give us everything, because we're going to try and give it all back. That's how it is for me. Listen, as I said, if you want to point all the reasons that you shouldn't do something and the problems that we have going on, it's probably not the place for you right now. We need people who are coming in here with the stomach for the fight, but on the pitch, in the background and in the stand. All right, we know where we're at. There's no surprises anymore, really. We're in the first division. All right, we've got a fight in our hands, but we're getting good people in the door on a daily basis. We're getting good people in the door, and we're trying to get back. So stick with us, all right, and get back and back the team again. All right, because at the end of the day, it's what happens out there on the pitch. That's really what defines football clubs. Do you know what I mean? And we need to get that back motoring as well, and that's my job.
Well, that was Dundalk FC's new manager, Kieran Kilduff, sharing his vision on the future and his appreciation for the fans. It's clear he's ready to take on the challenge, and we'll be following the Lily Whites closely in the First Division. Stay tuned for more updates on Dundalk FC and all things League of Ireland right here.
Anthony Bravender with Kieran Kilduff at Oriel Park there. I'm delighted to now welcome Tom Kelly of UL Men's Soccer Team to the studio with Kaylee. Tom is a third year PE and geography student here in UL and played centre back on the first UL team in history to win the ultimate prize in Irish intervarsity football, the Collingwood Cup, earlier this year. They will be keen to defend their crown again this year, no doubt.
Tom, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
No hassle, thanks very much.
Looking back on last year's achievement, winning the Collingwood Cup for the first time in UL history, can you describe to the listeners how monumental that was for everyone involved in UL soccer?
Yeah, it was huge. I suppose when you do something as big as that, it's not until after you really realise how big it was. It's something that Mike and Ian, the managers, they instill in us. It's not necessarily the players that are playing for UL at that certain time. It's kind of the players that came before you, because without them we wouldn't be where we are. So, no, we managed to achieve something really special, and it's something that'll bond us together for life. And I suppose not everyone understands that, but that's alright. It's kind of, we understand what we did.
Brilliant. And you lost the previous final to UCD. Given the talent they have at their disposal each year, you'd probably know that you'd have to beat them at some stages. Do you feel like you'll need to do that to get your hands on the trophy next year?
Yeah, 100%. Listen, UCD are probably the best team. They always are. And if you're going to win the Collingwood, you're going to have to beat them at some stage. So, listen, the game we beat them in semi-final, we beat them in the semi-final there last year, and I suppose everything went right for us that day, and I suppose we're out to get revenge for the year previous when they beat us in the final.
Brilliant. And of course the nature of college soccer is that players finish their courses or move on. You lost Ed O'Dwyer, who scored 4 goals in the knockout stages for you in 2024. To say to those who say you'll struggle for goals this season, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, listen, it's the nature of college football. Players graduate, players leave, but the great thing is players also come in. We're after getting a good few new first years coming in now, so no, listen, we'll be fine. We always are fine.
And as a centre-back yourself, you pride yourself on defensive solidity. Are you a set-piece threat yourself looking forward ahead of the competition?
I would be, yeah. It's something we practice lots. Set pieces are something that are a huge advantage to us. We've a very big team, so it's something we definitely practice on.
And you qualified the league quarter-finals and they ranked the third place team. Unfortunately, you're knocked out your old friends UCD. How do you feel like that sets you up to defend your crown in 2025?
Yeah, listen, the league campaign, it's kind of almost a pre-season. By the time Colin comes around, we'll be ready, no doubt. Listen, UCD again, they're very good. They were better than us on the day, but as I said, we kind of use the league campaign to get players together. There's a big gap between the Collingwood Cup in February and the league campaign in September, so it was important to get new bodies in and kind of get ready for the Collingwood Cup.
And you mentioned some of the players who moved on and others who've come into the squad. How do you feel that the coaches, Mick McCarthy and Ian Sullivan, get the team to bond and maintain that team spirit on the year? Yeah,
listen, Mike and Ian, they're absolute masters at university football. They've been around so long, so they're absolute masters at getting a bunch of lads together in such a short period of time, and without them we'd be nowhere. And not also them, there's Marty the kit man as well. Like he'd look after a clean kit, he'd have the Lucozade, the jellies in the dressing room. So they're a group of coaches that are just absolute masters at university football.
Brilliant. Tom, thank you so much for joining us and best of luck in the Collingwood Cup.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.
That's it for part one of the Backpass this morning. We'll be back after the break. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to the Backpass, Ireland's premier morning football show. In part 2, we'll be joined by our social media guru, Luke Allen, to help us break down our listeners' hot takes, which we will be reading live on air today. But before we get to that, earlier this week, Paul spoke with Limerick man Ronan Calvert, owner of a hugely successful Ireland Radar social media channel, which has since expanded to a website and weekly podcast, home of everything Irish football.
I'm joined by Ronan Calvert, freelance journalist and owner of Ireland Radar, as we said, formerly known as Kenny's Kids, the home of everything Irish football, which has since expanded beyond the realms of X/Twitter to a brand new website and a new weekly podcast covering all things Irish football. Ronan, before we dive in, can I just ask you a little bit about yourself, your background in terms of education and experience, especially in journalism, and of course the work you do currently?
Yeah, of course, Paul. First of all, thanks for having me on. I've probably been interested in media for a long time, like since I was about 10 or 12 years of age. I kind of already had a bit of an interest in sports journalism. So, while at the moment I'm doing Ireland Radar, I'm doing some freelance work across the kind of Irish sports media space. I worked with Sports Joe over the weekend, for example. But I've been kind of honing my skills for a long time in terms of I set up my own Munster Rugby page actually when I was about 10 or 12 years of age. And I kind of created a website from there just to give myself some writing experience. Thankfully that took off. I got lots of experience covering schools rugby to start off with, and that was like a major part of my experience. So when I got into college, I think the obvious thing to do would have been to do a journalism or media course. But anyway, I decided to do arts in UL as a result, English and economics for 4 years, enjoyed that, but I always kept a foot in media the whole time, and that was important. So extratime.ie let me write for them when I was in first year. Applied for an opening with Kenny's Kids in Punt Arena in second year, thankfully got that, and that kind of brings us up to speed to where we are today. A couple of years of doing that, as we'll kind of touch more on, but yeah, that's basically my background anyway.
And most importantly, you are from Limerick as well,
yeah,
which would be important.
The main thing, yeah. That's the thing I'm most proud of.
I'm surprised you didn't leave with that.
Yeah.
Great stuff. And I suppose sticking with then your initial, you said you worked with Kenny's Kids for a little while in its initial days, but looking at your initial takeover of Kenny's Kids, how did that come about, in terms of the decision-making process, or how did it kind of land on your plate, and what made you, I suppose, take the leap?
So what happened with Kenny's Kids was Kevin Higgins, the original owner, he was over that for like 2 years, did a fantastic job, like obsessively tracking players, more than I ever did, to be fair. But he stood away just to kind of pursue his own career, really. And he was meant to partner up with Punt Arena, who would have a pretty big Irish following. They have 500,000 Facebook followers. But Kevin decided he didn't want to be part of that last second. And thankfully, before Punterina had reached out, Kevin had asked, did any just, people out there want to take over the page with any kind of media experience? And I sent him on a fairly long message explaining why it might be me. Little did I know then Punterina were involved. Punterina got me on a call and we talked it through, and thankfully that's kind of how it started.
And then from a marketing perspective, how have you and the team there focused on, I suppose, establishing your place within the Irish football media world? How have you engaged and increased the following you guys have, and how do you differentiate yourselves from mainstream Irish media platforms?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that it's changed so much in just the last even 2 years, I suppose. Kind of Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter has changed it an awful lot, because I think what we were doing on Twitter all along just was kind of successful in its own right, really. And it's kind of just a personal thing, but I enjoyed using that platform, and it felt like good quality, reputable content.
Yes.
And it felt like all journalists would have felt the same way. I was happy enough doing what we were doing, which was just consistent tweeting, tracking all the players, posting the videos of the goals, and then follow-up articles. But I kind of felt like that content was getting less and less rewarded and less engagement.
Sure.
So it is a tricky space now. So we kind of want to diversify away from this particular platform.
Excellent. Ronan, last question for you then. What's next for Ireland Radar?
Largely, I think it's that piece of increasing and improving the quality of content we're putting out on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I think that's kind of the decision to go towards podcasting, is you can easily turn audio content into visual content, and caption it over reels and stuff. That's where it is now. That's kind of what you probably have to do to kind of get a lot of people to recognise you. But look, if that's what gets people to know the podcast, then they come to Spotify and actually see the good work they put in there, and that's what we're proud of, then that would be very good. Regular enough tweets and articles as well around international breaks. You're getting a pretty kind of full package there then. So that's where I'd like to go with it. As more time goes by, I think the more success it'll have, hopefully.
Great work being done by Rona and the team there. Now the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time for our listeners' hot takes. Joining myself and Paul in the studio is our social media guru, Mr. Luke Allen. Another quiet week on the socials, Luke?
Just a little bit, Kaylee. We've got a couple of hot takes being sent in by listeners, so we'll get straight to them. The first one is, the Premier League is not the best league in the world. Do you agree, Kaylee?
Absolutely disagree with that one. I definitely think the Premier League is the best league in the world.
I agree that it's not the best league in the world. I think it's the most entertaining league in the world. But if you look back, barring this season, Man City have won too many of them. It isn't competitive enough. Whereas if you compare the Italian league and Serie A, you've had multiple winners: Napoli, Inter Milan, AC Milan, Juventus down through the last 6-8 years. So for me, it's not the best league in the world.
I'd have to disagree with you there, Paul. Just in terms of the lower league teams, I feel like if you look at a Nottingham Forest this year, battling relegation last year, challenging for top four this year, I don't think you'll see that in any other league across Europe. And going forward, if you think of terms of Brighton being promoted within the last 4 years, they've gone into European football from building from the Championship upwards.
We'll have to say the money is a bit different in the Premier League compared to the other leagues, but I think that's a topic for another day.
Absolutely, that will bring us on. That will bring us on to the second hot take that we have, and it's transfer related, money related. Ipswich Town had the best summer transfer window. Agree or disagree, Kaylee?
Definitely agree, I would say, with that one, Luke. Paul?
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree.
I definitely think if you look at Liam Delap, I think is a standout player that they've signed this season from Man City, £17.85 million. And the goals that he's scoring, I think he's one of the top scorers in the league at the moment with 6 goals for a team that's battling relegation. They've only won 1 game all season. You'd have to say he's nearly keeping them in it at this stage.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of biased tinted glasses on here, Luke, but the Irish signings that they've made. Now, unfortunately, Liam Delap will not play for Ireland. But looking at Sammy Smodics, Darragh O'Shea, who played a great game there against Man United on Sunday, and then Chidozie Ogbene, who unfortunately now is out for the season. But you look at a team like Ipswich, they're still haunted by a 9-0 beating by Man United 30 years ago. They've definitely put that to bed, and yeah, I think a big part of their transfer window as well was keeping manager Kieran McKenna, and that's why I think to round it off, looking at all the teams in the league, as a Newcastle fan who had a terrible window, I think it's fair to say Ipswich have had one of, if not the best window.
And you'd have to look at the point of when Paul was mentioning earlier about money in the league. Ipswich would probably have one of the lowest budgets in the league. If you look at a West Ham struggling this season, they spent well over £100 million, and if you look at the deals that Ipswich have made, it's just been good business, and that's coming from the top down in terms of the structure.
Absolutely. We have time for one more, very quick one. So, Man City should not have extended Pep Guardiola's contract.
Absolutely disagree with that one. I definitely think they should have extended it. Paul?
I am tempted to agree with this one, Luke. I think you have an intriguing opinion here from one of the listeners to say not to. I mean, it's controversial, right? This is arguably one of, if not the best managers in the world currently, and has been in the Premier League for so long. But just when I look at how Man City are doing overall in terms of their evolution, Pep has been renowned for going through cycles. You know, there was the post kind of Yaya Toure, David Silva, Sergio Aguero eras, and he's navigated through that and replaced them. But I feel like that it's come to a point where I don't want to question his appetite. It's Pep Guardiola. But looking at their team now, you look at it two ways. One, the impact, again, this happened last season when they were missing Rodri, they lost games. The exact same thing is happening again. So you'd have to question, this isn't a team short of money. I don't think they have PSR issues. And just the second thing would be, I guess, looking at the signings they have brought in. If you remove Haaland's goals from Man City, they're probably a bottom half team. None of the signings they've made, Doku, Grealish, Savio, are actually contributing goals. I think Josko Gvardiol is their most prolific player after Haaland in terms of shots on goal and goals. So, yeah, I'm going to agree with that statement.
In terms of disagreement, I mean, if you look across Europe at the moment, what managers are out there? Ruben Amorim, as a biased United fan, was probably one of the best out there, and he's gone to rivals United. And if you're looking at the rest of the league, are you going to go for an Eddie Howe? Is he going to be any better than a Pep Guardiola? You look at Jurgen Klopp's now retired and he's gone into more management of football. There's not many managers that you'd look out there thinking Man City can go get them and they're going to be better than a Pep Guardiola. So that's why I'd have to disagree. I feel like they were nearly pushed into an extension.
An absolute hot topic nonetheless. Right, well, on that bombshell, I think that brings today's Backpass to a close. A big thank you to Kaylee, Luke, Anthony and producer Jackie in the booth, and of course Tom for joining us live in the studio, and to you listeners. As usual, it's at the Backpass on all the socials, so be sure to check us out wherever you hang out. We'll be back for another Football Frenzy tomorrow, so until then, from all of us here at the Backpass, goodbye for now.